I grew up in a neighborhood where success was measured by whether you could keep the lights on. My mom did everything she could, worked double shifts at the hospital, picked up weekend hours at the diner, and somehow still managed to make it to my basketball games. I swore to myself that one day, I'd give her a life where she wouldn't have to worry about making rent. By 16, I was knee-deep in cars, spending every free second at Mr. Russo's auto shop, learning the difference between a transmission that purred and one that begged for mercy. It was more than a job, it was my calling. While kids at my high school were worrying about SAT scores and prom dates, I was under the hood of a '69 Camaro, figuring out why the engine kept misfiring. Then came Ava. She wasn't the kind of girl you meet in a garage, more like the kind you see in those glossy magazines stacked in the waiting area. Her father was some big-shot investment guy, owned half the high-rises downtown. She drove a brand-new Audi with custom plates that read, Daddy's LIL1. She could have walked into any dealership and left with a newer model, but instead, she brought it to Russo's. "You guys fixed these, right?" she asked, flipping her long hair over her shoulder. I should have known then that this wasn't about the car. It started small, her stopping by after class, bringing coffee, asking questions she pretended to care about. Before I knew it, we were dating. For a while, it felt like something out of a movie, sneaking into country clubs where I didn't belong, driving down empty highways with the top down, her laughing at my oil-stained hands as I tried to hold hers without smudging her dress. Her family? That was another story. Her father, Richard Belmont, treated me like a stray dog that had wandered into his mansion. Her mother barely acknowledged me, except to remind Ava, constantly, that I wasn't husband material. And her older brother, Nathan? He made it his personal mission to remind me I'd never be good enough. But Ava? She swore I was all she wanted. Until the night everything changed. It was some ridiculous gala at their estate. One of those charity events where rich people bid obscene amounts of money on art they didn't understand. I wasn't supposed to be there, but Ava insisted. "They need to see the real you," she whispered, straightening my tie. "Not the grease monkey. The man I love." For 3 hours, I played along, smiled, shook hands, listened to men with expensive watches talk about stocks I couldn't afford. Then came Logan Sinclair. Tall, blonde, born into money. The type of guy who never had to work a day in his life. He was everything Ava's parents wanted for her, and they made sure to remind me, by seating him next to her at dinner, by laughing just a little too hard at his jokes, by conveniently placing them together in every photo. I tried to ignore it, until I couldn't. "I don't get it, Ava," I said on the drive home, gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. "Are we serious, or am I just some rebel phase you're going through?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared out the window, her fingers playing with the hem of her designer dress. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "I need to think about my future." It was like someone had punched me in the gut. "My future?" I repeated. "And I'm not in it?" She didn't say no. She didn't say anything at all. A week later, I found out through social media, a picture of her and Logan at a rooftop bar, her arm draped over his like they'd been together forever. The caption? "Sometimes life leads you where you're meant to be." I spent the next few months in a downward spiral, drinking too much, losing customers, nearly ruining my reputation. Until one night, standing in my empty garage, staring at my dwindling savings, I made a decision. I was done chasing people who didn't believe in me. It was time to build something no one could take away. For the first time in months, I woke up before sunrise with a purpose. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The ache in my chest over Ava? It was still there, but it had started morphing into something else, fuel. I shut off my phone, deleted every social media app, and grabbed a notebook. I'd spent too much time wasting away in self-pity. If I was going to prove something, it wouldn't be to her. It would be to myself. The first step? Money. My savings had been drained, and my garage, though still standing, was barely keeping the lights on. Mr. Russo had offered me a job at his shop again, but I couldn't go back. I couldn't let anyone see how far I'd fallen. Instead, I started picking up side work. Late nights fixing cars in back alleys, taking calls from guys who didn't want their cars in public garages. Some of them were legit, collectors looking for an expert touch. Others? Not so much. But I didn't ask questions. I needed cash. Fast. 3 months in, I'd made just enough to cover my debts. More importantly, I'd started making a name for myself in underground circles. Not the kind that got you invited to country clubs, but the kind that earned you respect where it mattered. Then came the break I didn't expect. One night, I was working on an Aston Martin in an abandoned warehouse when a guy in a navy blue suit showed up. Slicked back hair, Rolex gleaming under the streetlight. He introduced himself as Vincent DeLuca. "I hear you're the guy people call when the dealerships screw up," he said, lighting a cigarette. "I need a miracle." I leaned against the car and crossed my arms. "Depends on the miracle." He handed me a folder. Inside were photos of a Ferrari, one of the rarest models I'd ever seen, practically totaled. The body was intact, but under the hood, a nightmare. It looked like someone had tried to rebuild the engine blindfolded. "Belongs to a friend," Vincent continued. "A very wealthy friend who took it to Morrison Luxury Automotive. They botched it so bad it's undrivable. Now he's looking for someone who actually knows what the hell they're doing." Morrison Luxury. My jaw clenched at the name. That was Logan Sinclair's family business. "So," Vincent exhaled a cloud of smoke. "You in?" I didn't hesitate. "I'm in." It took me 2 weeks of sleepless nights to bring that Ferrari back to life. When I was done, Vincent showed up with the owner, a man who looked like he could buy and sell the entire city if he wanted. He didn't say much, just handed me an envelope. Inside was a check. A big one. "This isn't just payment," Vincent said. "It's an opportunity. Guys like my friend, they need someone they can trust. Someone who won't screw them over like Morrison did. You up for that?" I looked at the check again, then at the Ferrari, then back at Vincent. I knew this was my chance. The one that could change everything. "I'm up for it," I said. What I didn't know was that this deal wouldn't just put me on the map. It would put me on a collision course with the very people who had tried to erase me. And this time, I wasn't going anywhere. Word traveled fast. Within weeks, my name was being whispered in circles I never imagined I'd be part of: wealthy car collectors, underground racing crews, and even a few old money types who wanted their exotic cars handled by someone who actually knew what they were doing, not some suit behind a dealership counter. The Morrison name had taken a hit after I fixed that Ferrari. The owner, some high-stakes investor, made sure everyone in his network knew what had happened. The message was clear: Morrison Luxury Automotive was a scam. If you wanted real work done, you came to me. I worked like a man possessed. I barely ate, barely slept, and barely saw the outside world. My garage, which had once been a rundown space with flickering lights, was now something else entirely. With the money from Vincent's contact, I upgraded everything: state-of-the-art lifts, diagnostic tools, even a lounge for high-end clients. I wasn't just fixing cars anymore. I was building an empire. And then, just as things were settling into place, she walked through my door. Ava. I almost didn't recognize her at first. The perfectly curated designer look was gone, replaced by something simpler, more understated. A loose sweater, jeans, still expensive, but nothing like what she used to wear. But it wasn't just the clothes. It was the way she carried herself, like someone who had lost. "Wow," she murmured, looking around. "This place is different." I wiped my hands on a rag and leaned against the workbench. "Yeah, things change." She nodded, like she was trying to find the right words. "I heard about what you've been doing." I raised an eyebrow. "Through who?" "Your boyfriend." A flicker of something crossed her face: pain, regret, maybe even embarrassment. "We're not together anymore." I shouldn't have cared. I shouldn't have felt even a sliver of satisfaction. But I did. I just kept my expression neutral. "That right?" She hesitated. "Listen, I know I have no right to be here, but I wanted to see you. To tell you that I—" The bell over the door jingled. Ava turned, and in walked someone who definitely wasn't Logan Sinclair. She was tall, effortlessly confident, with her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and a leather jacket that looked like it had seen more adrenaline than most people did in a lifetime. She walked straight past Ava and came up to me, dropping a folder on the counter. "Got another one for you," she said, smirking. Ava blinked. "Who?" I smirked. "Ava, meet Sienna. She's my partner." Sienna shot a glance at Ava, then looked back at me, unimpressed. "You didn't tell me your past mistakes would be stopping by." I chuckled, flipping through the folder. "Neither did I." Ava shifted on her feet. "I should go." "Yeah," Sienna said bluntly. "You should." Ava looked at me one last time, searching for something. maybe hoping I'd ask her to stay, to talk, to give her the closure she wanted. I didn't. She sighed, nodded, and left without another word. Sienna whistled low. That was interesting. I shrugged. Not really. She studied me for a moment. You over her? I looked down at the file she'd handed me. Another botched Morrison job, another opportunity. Yeah, I said, smiling. I am. But the war? The war was just getting started. Morrison Luxury Automotive was crumbling, and I was the one pulling out the foundation brick by brick. Every high-end car owner they pissed off found their way to my garage. Every time their service department failed to deliver, I was there to clean up their mess. It wasn't about revenge. Not exactly. It was about proving that you couldn't buy real skill, couldn't fake passion, couldn't bury someone who was willing to outwork you every damn day. But I wasn't just fixing cars anymore. I was dismantling an empire. And Logan Sinclair finally noticed. It started with whispers. I heard from clients that Morrison was suddenly offering deep discounts, practically giving away service packages to win back their loyalty. Then came the marketing push, billboards, social media ads, interviews where Logan talked about redefining luxury automotive service. But the real sign that they were feeling the heat? Logan showed up at my shop. I was under the hood of a McLaren P1 when I heard the unmistakable sound of an expensive car pulling up. Not just any car. A Porsche 911 Turbo S, sleek and blacked out. The kind of car that screamed money without trying too hard. I straightened up, wiping my hands. And sure enough, there he was. Logan Sinclair, dressed in an immaculate suit, sunglasses perched on his perfectly styled hair, the same smug confidence he'd always carried. But there was something different in his eyes, something less certain. Well, I said, crossing my arms. Didn't expect to see you here. He took off his glasses, looking around the shop like he was inspecting it for flaws. You've done well for yourself. Yeah, I said. That tends to happen when you actually know what you're doing. A muscle twitched in his jaw, but he forced a smile. I think we got off on the wrong foot. I laughed. Is that what we're calling it? He exhaled through his nose. Look, I'm not here to trade insults. I'm here to talk business. I gestured to the shop. This is business. Real business, he clarified. You're good. I'll give you that. But what you're doing? It's a small operation. You're fixing cars one by one, building a name, sure. But if you really want to make it big, you need resources. Infrastructure. I could see where this was going. He stepped closer. We should work together. I snorted. You serious? Dead serious, he said. We both know Morrison's been slipping. I'll admit, we cut some corners. But I can change that. And you're exactly what we need. The talent, the credibility. You come on board, we restructure, make it something new. Something unstoppable. I tilted my head. You mean, I fix what you broke? He smiled. You get equity. A real seat at the table. You'd be in charge of operations, the entire technical side. We take your brand, your reputation, and scale it. We dominate. I stared at him for a long moment. And then I laughed. Let me get this straight, I said. You dragged my name through the dirt. Took my girl. Watched me fall. And now that I built something real, you want me to help save your sinking ship? His jaw tightened. Business is business. Yeah, I said. And mine's doing just fine without you. He exhaled, shaking his head. You're making a mistake. No, I said, stepping past him. I made a mistake thinking you mattered. I walked back toward the McLaren, dismissing him like he was just another problem I'd already solved. But as he left, I knew this wasn't over. Logan Sinclair didn't take no for an answer. And something told me he wasn't done playing dirty. 2 weeks after Logan's little visit, the gloves came off. It started small, harmless, even. Rumors. Clients who had booked with me suddenly canceled last minute. A few suppliers I'd worked with for months started giving me the runaround on shipments. I didn't have proof, but I knew exactly who was behind it. Then things escalated. One morning, I walked into the shop and found my front window shattered. Glass everywhere, a brick lying on the floor with a note tied to it. Stay in your lane. I stared at it for a long time, my hands tightening into fists. Logan was getting desperate. Sienna walked in a minute later, her eyes widening. You've got to be kidding me. I picked up the brick, rolling it in my palm. They think this is going to scare me? She folded her arms. It's not about scaring you. It's about making you angry. They want you to lash out. Make a mistake. She was right. The old me? I would have stormed down to Morrison's dealership, demanded answers, maybe thrown some punches. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I was smarter now. So instead of reacting, I got to work. If Logan wanted a war, I'd give him one. But I wouldn't play his game. I'd make him play mine. The first move? I doubled down on everything. I reached out to every single client who had canceled and offered them a deal they couldn't refuse. Free diagnostics, complimentary services, full transparency on every repair. Word spread fast. People started talking not just about my work, but about how Morrison Luxury Automotive was trying to sabotage a guy who was actually doing things right. Then I went for their weak spot. Morrison's service department had been bleeding clients for months, but I knew they were still making bank on one thing: fleet contracts. The high-end rental agencies, luxury transport services, even some of the sports teams in town, they all had deals with Morrison for regular maintenance. I started making calls. At first, they brushed me off, but I knew what buttons to push. I started showing them the numbers, the overcharging, the unnecessary service fees, the inflated invoices that made Morrison rich while leaving their cars in worse shape than before. It took a few weeks, but one by one, they started switching over. Morrison was losing money. Fast. And then came the final blow. It was late one evening when I got a call from Vincent DeLuca. "Meet me at the docks," he said. I frowned. "Why?" "You'll see." Vincent wasn't the kind of guy you ignored, so I drove down there. The air smelled like salt and gasoline, the dim glow of warehouse lights flickering over rows of shipping containers. Vincent leaned against his car, smoking a cigarette. "Got something for you." He nodded toward one of the containers. I followed him inside, and the moment I saw what was in there, I let out a low whistle. Ferraris, Bentleys, Lamborghinis, all of them brand new, all of them Morrison imports, and all of them sitting there, untouched, because someone had pulled the plug on their shipment. Vincent smirked. Turns out Morrison's been cutting some corners with customs, playing fast and loose with paperwork. Someone tipped off the right people, and now they're stuck in red tape hell. I turned to him. "You did this." He shrugged. "Call it an investment. You're good for business." I looked back at the cars, feeling the weight of what this meant. This wasn't just a loss for Morrison. This was a disaster. Without these imports, they couldn't fulfill orders, couldn't supply their high-end clients, couldn't keep up the illusion that they were still at the top of the game. This was the kind of hit you didn't come back from. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. "Logan's going to lose it." Vincent grinned. "Good." For a long moment, I just stood there, taking it all in. This was it. The moment Morrison fell, I'd won. Or so I thought. Because the next day, something happened that I never saw coming. Something that would change everything. The next day started like any other. I was in the middle of tuning an Aston Martin when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something in my gut told me to pick up. I wiped my hands on a rag and answered. "Yeah." A woman's voice came through, shaky and hesitant. Is this Alex?" I stiffened. "Who's asking?" She took a breath. "It's Ava." I didn't say anything. Didn't move. Just let her name hang in the air like the smell of burnt oil. "Please," she said. "I need to see you. It's important." My first instinct? Hang up. Ignore it. She'd made her choice, and I'd buried the part of me that cared a long time ago. But something in her voice, it wasn't the Ava I remembered. It wasn't the polished, high-society girl who traded me in for an easier life. She sounded scared. Against my better judgment, I sighed. "Where are you?" She gave me an address. Not a mansion. Not a rooftop bar. Just a rundown apartment on the east side of town. Something was wrong. I pulled up outside her building, a crumbling old place with a flickering streetlight and graffiti on the walls. This wasn't where Ava belonged. And that's what worried me. When she opened the door, I barely recognized her. She was thinner, paler. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced by dark circles under her eyes and a nervous energy I'd never seen before. She wasn't wearing designer anymore, just an old sweater, her hands clutching the sleeves like she was trying to hold herself together. I stepped inside, scanning the tiny apartment. One suitcase in the corner. A half-empty bottle of wine on the table. Bills stacked on the counter. "You gonna tell me what's going on, or?" I prompted. She bit her lip, pacing. "I don't know where to start. Try the beginning." She let out a shuddering breath. "It's Logan." Of course it was. I crossed my arms. "What about him?" Her hands trembled. "He's not who you think he is." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I think I've got a pretty good idea." "No," she said, shaking her head. "You don't understand. The business, it's worse than you know. Logan's desperate, Alex. After everything you've done, After the contracts you stole, the clients that left, the import scandal. He's losing control. I leaned against the wall. Good. She flinched. No, not good. Because when Logan loses control, he doesn't just give up. I studied her carefully. What are you trying to say? She hesitated, like she wasn't sure if she should say it. Then, in a whisper, she said, he's going to hurt you. A chill ran down my spine. I'd expected Logan to fight back, expected underhanded tactics, maybe even legal trouble. But this? You're telling me Logan Sinclair is actually dangerous? I asked, skeptical. She swallowed hard. His family, they're connected, not just in business, in other ways, shady ways. And Logan? He's been unraveling. The night he found out about the imports being seized, he lost it, threw a glass at the wall, screamed about how he was going to handle it personally. Her voice cracked. I think he's planning something, and I think you're in real trouble. I let her words settle, watching her carefully. This wasn't just a warning, it was a plea. Ava, I said slowly, why are you telling me this? Why now? Her eyes glistened. Because I was wrong about you, about everything. And I can't just sit back and watch him destroy you. I studied her for a long moment, trying to figure out if she was telling the truth, or if this was just another game. Then, from outside, I heard the unmistakable sound of tires screeching. Ava gasped, "Oh my God." I turned just in time to see a black SUV pull up fast. Too fast. Before I could react, the doors flew open, and men in suits stepped out, coming straight for us. Time slowed. I grabbed Ava by the wrist and pulled her back just as the first guy stepped onto the curb. He was built like a linebacker, wearing an expensive suit that barely fit over his bulk. The second guy was leaner, but his eyes were dead, cold, calculating. The kind of man who didn't need to make threats because he was the threat. Ava's grip tightened on my arm. "Alex, we have to go." But it was too late. The big guy spoke first, his voice even, almost polite. "Mr. Hayes, we need to have a conversation." I stepped in front of Ava. "Yeah? See, I don't usually do business with guys who show up unannounced. Maybe try making an appointment next time." The lean guy smirked. "We're not here for business. We're here for resolution." Ava was shaking now. "Alex, please. They're serious." I knew that, and I knew exactly who had sent them. Logan. I glanced around. The street was mostly empty, the kind of place where people minded their own business. No security cameras. No witnesses. Logan had picked his battlefield well. "All right," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Let's talk." The big guy took a step forward. "Not here. Get in the car." I laughed. "Yeah, that's not happening." The lean guy sighed, like I was being difficult on purpose. "You don't have much of a choice." "See, that's where you're wrong," I said. And then I moved. I shoved Ava back and threw the first punch, cracking my knuckles against the big guy's jaw. It was like hitting a brick wall. He barely flinched. But I wasn't done. I grabbed the rag I still had in my hand, one soaked in engine oil, and whipped it toward the lean guy's face. He recoiled, swearing, and I used the distraction to grab Ava and bolt. We ran. Through the alley, over broken pavement, past dumpsters reeking of old food. Ava kept pace, breathing hard. I could hear the guys behind us, their footsteps pounding, gaining fast. We burst out onto the next street, and that's when I saw it. A familiar car parked across the way. A sleek black motorcycle. Sienna. She was leaning against it, arms crossed like she'd been expecting this. "Took you long enough," she said, tossing me a helmet. "Not now," I snapped, shoving it on. "Ava, get on." She hesitated for half a second, but the sound of shouting behind us made up her mind. She climbed on, gripping my waist. I revved the engine, felt the deep purr of the machine beneath me, and peeled out onto the road just as the two men burst onto the sidewalk. A gun was drawn. A shot fired. The bullet hit the pavement near the back wheel, sending up sparks. Sienna, now on her own bike, cut them off. "Really, boys? Shooting in broad daylight? That's messy." I didn't wait to see what happened next. I twisted the throttle, and we were gone. We rode for miles, weaving through traffic, taking back streets until I was sure we weren't being followed. Only then did I slow down, pulling into an empty lot behind an old warehouse. Ava was trembling as she climbed off. I pulled off my helmet and turned to her. "Start talking." She swallowed hard. "I told you, Alex. Logan isn't just some spoiled rich kid. His family, his connections, they don't lose. And right now, you've made them lose. That means they're coming for you." I ran a hand through my hair, adrenaline still pumping. "Yeah, I got that part. What I don't get is why you're suddenly in the middle of it." She looked away. "Because I was part of it, too." Silence. Sienna pulled up next to us, cutting the engine. "Oh, this should be good." Ava took a shaky breath. I knew about some of what Logan was doing. At first, I ignored it. Then I made excuses. But when the business started going under, he got paranoid. He thought I knew more than I did. Thought I might talk. Her voice dropped. "He threatened me, Alex." Something sharp and cold curled in my stomach. Ava might have made her choices, but I knew fear when I saw it. Logan wasn't just trying to save his business. He was cleaning house. And now, Ava and I were both on the list. I paced behind the warehouse, my mind racing. Ava was huddled near an old crate, still shaken. Sienna leaned against her bike, arms crossed, watching me. "They're not going to stop," I muttered. Sienna shrugged. "Nope." I exhaled hard. "Then we end it." Ava looked up, wide-eyed. "End it?" "Alex, these people, Logan's family, they have power. They have people everywhere. You think you can just fight them?" I turned to her. "I don't think. I know. Because here's the thing. Logan had money, connections, and a name that used to mean something. But me? I had something better. I had nothing left to lose." I crouched down in front of Ava. "You need to tell me everything. No more half-truths. No more protecting him. You want my help? You tell me exactly how deep this goes." She hesitated, biting her lip. Then, finally, she spoke. "Logan's father, his whole family, they don't just run the dealerships," she whispered. "They use them to launder money. Dirty money. Millions. That's why they're so desperate to stay afloat." I clenched my jaw. That explained a lot. "But there's more," she continued. "There's a ledger. Logan kept records. Who paid, who got paid, which businesses were fronts. I only saw glimpses, but I know it exists." A ledger. That was it. That was the kill shot. "Where is it?" I asked. Ava swallowed. "In Logan's office. At the Morrison headquarters." Sienna let out a low whistle. "So let me get this straight. You want to walk into enemy territory, steal a book that incriminates a criminal empire, and waltz out alive?" I stood up, cracking my knuckles. "Yeah, that's exactly what I want." Ava shook her head. "No, Alex. You don't understand. Logan doesn't just keep it locked away. He has security, cameras, armed guards." "Then we'll be smart," I interrupted. "We get in. We get the book. And we end this." Sienna grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that." Ava still looked terrified. "You're crazy." I smiled. "Maybe. But crazy was exactly what this situation called for. Because I wasn't just going to take Logan down. I was going to erase him. Breaking into Morrison headquarters wasn't just risky. It was borderline suicidal. But I didn't care. Logan had made this personal. And if the ledger was real, it was the one thing that could bring his entire family down. We spent the next few hours planning. Sienna, ever the strategist, mapped out every entry point, every blind spot in their security system. She had a friend, a hacker, who pulled blueprints of the building. Morrison's main offices were on the top floor, but more importantly, Logan's personal office was tucked away in a restricted section. "We need a distraction," she said, tracing a path on the digital map. "Something big enough to pull security away from that floor." I nodded. "What about their garage? Their service department?" Ava looked up. "That's where they keep their most valuable inventory." "Exactly," I said. "We make them think there's a threat to their cars, and they'll scramble. It buys us time." Sienna smirked. "I like the way you think." Ava, however, was shaking her head. "No. No way. Do you have any idea what they'll do if they catch you?" I met her eyes. "Yeah, that's why we don't get caught." She exhaled, rubbing her temples. This is insane. But she didn't try to stop me. That night, we rolled up to Morrison Luxury Automotive under cover of darkness. Sienna parked her bike a few blocks away, while Ava and I pulled up in a beat-up sedan we'd borrowed from one of her old friends. It blended in. Nothing flashy. Nothing suspicious. "This is it," Sienna muttered through the earpiece. "You ready?" I took a deep breath. "Let's do it." Sienna, being the chaos artist she was, had prepared something special, a remote-triggered fire alarm in their service bay. The moment she activated it, sirens blared through the building and security flooded downstairs. "Go. Now," she said. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed Ava's wrist and sprinted through the side entrance, slipping through the doorway before it locked down. Inside, the halls were eerily quiet. Everyone was scrambling toward the garage. Logan's office was up 3 flights of stairs. We moved fast, ducking under cameras, sticking to the blind spots Sienna had mapped out. When we reached the top floor, I pressed my back against the wall and listened. Footsteps. One guard. Ava grabbed my arm. "Alex." I put a finger to my lips. "Stay behind me." The guard rounded the corner, and I moved before he could react. A sharp elbow to the throat. A knee to the gut. He hit the floor with a thud. Ava stared at me, wide-eyed. "Where the hell did you learn to do that?" I smirked. "You think fixing cars is my only skill?" She didn't argue. We pushed forward, reaching Logan's office. The door was locked, but locks could be broken. I pulled out a small pry tool, wedged it into the frame, and forced it open with a sharp pop. Inside, the office was exactly what I expected. Sleek, expensive, soulless. But I wasn't here to admire the furniture. I was here for the ledger. Ava pointed to a safe in the corner. "That's where he keeps it." I nodded, moving fast. "Watch the door." She stood by the entrance as I crouched by the safe, running my fingers over the dial. Logan was arrogant. The kind of guy who thought he was untouchable. That meant his code was probably something obvious. I tried the date of his dealership's grand opening. Nothing. His birthday. Click. I grinned. Idiot. The safe door swung open, and there it was. A thick, leather-bound ledger. I flipped it open, scanning the pages. It was all there. Names, numbers, accounts tied to shell companies. Proof of fraud, bribery, and money laundering that stretched back years. This wasn't just a smoking gun. This was a nuclear bomb. I turned to Ava. "We got it." Her expression was conflicted. "This is really happening." "Yeah," I said, tucking the book under my jacket. "It is." That's when the alarm changed. A voice crackled through the speakers. "Lockdown engaged." I froze. Ava's face drained of color. Oh my God. The security system had switched. That meant only one thing. They knew we were here, and they weren't going to let us leave. The air in Logan's office went still. Red emergency lights bathed the room in an eerie glow, and the metallic clank of security shutters echoed through the halls. The lockdown was real. This wasn't some standard alarm response. This was controlled. I clenched my jaw. Logan knew we were here. Ava backed against the desk, her breathing shallow. "Alex, what do we do?" I ignored the panic rising in my chest. "Stay sharp. Stay smart." I grabbed the ledger and shoved it inside my jacket. "We move." A quick check through the security feed on Logan's computer showed that the stairwells were swarming. No easy way down. They were locking the building from the outside in. Then my earpiece crackled. "Alex," Sienna's voice was urgent. "Get out. Now." "Yeah, working on it." "No," she snapped. "You don't get it. Logan's here." My blood went cold. "Are you sure?" I muttered. "Black SUV just rolled up. He's got 4 guys with him, all in suits, and trust me, those aren't corporate types." I cursed under my breath. This wasn't just about catching us. This was about making sure we didn't leave. At all. Ava grabbed my sleeve. "Alex, we're trapped?" I exhaled sharply. "No, we weren't." I pulled out my phone, flipped to the blueprint Sienna had sent earlier. Then I spotted it, the service elevator on the other side of the floor. It was their emergency maintenance access, leading straight to the underground parking lot. "New plan," I muttered. "We take the elevator." Ava hesitated. "What if it's shut down?" "Then we make it move," I said. already heading for the door. We slipped into the hallway, moving fast. The sound of boots echoed somewhere below, getting closer. They were sweeping the building. We didn't have long. We reached the elevator. I punched the call button. Nothing. Damn it, I hissed. Here, Ava whispered, pointing to the control panel. Can you bypass it? Only one way to find out. I yanked off the cover, exposing a mess of wires. My hands worked fast, red to blue, ground alive, rerouting the override system manually. I'd hotwired 100 cars in my life. This was just another machine. Ava's eyes darted down the hall. Alex, hurry. I twisted the last connection. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. Go. I pushed Ava inside and followed, slamming the button for the basement. The doors were halfway shut when I saw the first guy round the corner. He saw us, raised a gun. I grabbed Ava and spun her behind me just as the doors slammed shut. A shot rang out. The bullet ricocheted off the metal. Ava gasped. Oh my God. We're fine, I said, though my heart was pounding. But we're not stopping. The second those doors opened, we'd have seconds to escape. I pulled my phone and dialed Sienna. Tell me you've got an exit, I said. Oh, I've got one, she said. But you're not gonna like it. I gritted my teeth. Just say it. You ever jumped off a second-story parking deck? Ava turned to me in horror. No. I let out a slow breath. Guess we're about to. The elevator dinged again. The doors opened to the underground garage. And waiting for us, 3 more guys, weapons drawn. I grabbed Ava's wrist. Run. We sprinted. The men shouted, moving fast, but we had a head start. I dodged between rows of sleek luxury cars, using them as cover. Ava was right behind me, breath ragged. Then, headlights. A motorcycle roared to life. Sienna. She gunned the throttle, sliding between the parked cars before skidding to a stop right in front of us. Hop on, she yelled. I didn't hesitate. I threw a leg over the bike, grabbed Ava, and hauled her onto my lap. Hold on, I shouted. Sienna twisted the throttle. We tore through the garage, engine screaming. Security was right behind us. Then, up ahead, I saw it. The parking deck ramp, leading straight to open air. Ava realized at the same time I did. You're kidding. Not even a little, Sienna said, grinning. We hit the ramp at full speed. And then, we were airborne. The bike sailed over the edge. For a split second, there was nothing but air beneath us. Ava screamed. Then, we landed. Hard. The tires screeched as we hit the ground 2 stories below. The bike skidded, but Sienna kept it under control, barely missing a parked car. Behind us, security was still scrambling. We were gone. 15 minutes later, we pulled into a dark alleyway on the outskirts of town. The second the engine died, Ava stumbled off, still shaking. I hate you, she muttered, doubling over. Sienna laughed. You love me. I pulled out the ledger, flipping through it. This is it. This is the end of Logan. Ava swallowed hard. Not yet. I looked up. What do you mean? She took a breath. Logan's not just going to let this slide. He's coming. Sienna cracked her knuckles. Good. I stared at the ledger, the weight of it settling in. This wasn't over. But it would be soon. Logan Sinclair's time was up, and I was going to be the one to bury him. The storm was coming. I could feel it in the way the city seemed to hold its breath, the way my hands gripped the ledger a little too tight. Logan had lost too much. Money, power, reputation. And guys like him, they didn't lose quietly. I flipped through the pages again, scanning the names and numbers. This wasn't just about dirty money. It was about control. Logan's family had their hands in everything. Real estate, nightclubs, high-end imports, even politicians. And every single one of them was listed right here. Ava stood across from me, arms wrapped around herself. What now? I met her eyes. We end this. Sienna pulled her helmet off, shaking out her hair. We got 2 options. 1, we go to the cops. I cut her off. No cops. She nodded like she expected that. Figured. Option 2, leak it. Everything. Every dirty deal, every connection. We put this out in the open, and Logan's whole world burns. Ava hesitated. That's dangerous. I scoffed. No more dangerous than what we just pulled off. She chewed on her lip. You don't get it. Logan's family, they don't just let things go. If this goes public, they'll come after you. Hard. Sienna smirked. Let him. But I wasn't looking at Sienna. I was looking at Ava. You scared for me? Or for yourself? I asked. She flinched. Both. For the first time, I saw it. Real fear in her eyes. Not for Logan, not for his empire, but for me. I exhaled. We don't have a choice. Ava was right. If we leaked this, Logan's family wouldn't just lose money. They'd lose everything. They'd go after anyone who had a hand in it. I thought about my shop, about my mom, about everything I had built from the ground up. But then I thought about Logan, how he had tried to ruin me, how he had sent people to kill me, how he had controlled everyone around him with fear. I was done running. We leak it, I said, gripping the ledger. Tonight. Sienna worked fast. She had connections, people who knew how to make things disappear and reappear in the right places. We didn't just dump the ledger online. We sent it to the right people, journalists, watchdogs, even a couple of Logan's old enemies who had been waiting for this moment. It didn't take long for the fire to catch. By midnight, headlines were popping up. Morrison luxury automotive tied to money laundering scandal. Political figures linked to illegal business operations. Billionaire family under investigation. Could this be the end? And just like that, Logan's empire started to crumble. But I knew he wasn't going to go down quietly. And I was right. Because an hour later, my phone rang. Logan. I let it ring twice before I picked up. Bad night. I said. Silence. Then, his voice, low and controlled. You don't know what you just did. I smirked. Yeah, I do. I just ended you. More silence. Then, you think this is over? I know it is, I said. You can try to fight it. Try to spin it. But the truth's already out. And no amount of money is going to fix it this time. His voice turned sharp. You think you won? You think you're untouchable? I leaned against the wall. No, but I'm not scared of you anymore. For the first time since this all started, Logan hesitated. I could hear the weight of it settling on him. He had lost. Not in some boardroom. Not in some hostile takeover. He had lost to me. You made a mistake, he whispered. No, I said. You did. And then I hung up. 2 days later, the feds raided Morrison headquarters. Logan's father was arrested. His accounts were frozen. The Morrison name, the one that had been untouchable for decades, was gone. Logan? He ran. Fled the city. Last I heard, he was hiding out somewhere in Europe, trying to scrape together what was left of his fortune. Ava disappeared too. One night, she packed a bag and left. No note. No explanation. Just gone. I didn't chase her. I had what I wanted. I had my life back. I had won. A year later, I stood outside my shop, the new shop. Bigger. Better. No longer just a garage, but a name. My name. Clients lined up months in advance. The kind of clients who used to ignore me. The kind of clients who used to go to Morrison. Sienna walked up beside me, sipping a coffee. So, she said. We did it. I nodded. Yeah, we did. She smirked. What now? I looked out over the city. And I smiled. Now? We build something bigger. Because Logan's empire? I hadn't just destroyed it. I had replaced it. And no one was ever taking it from me again.